All right. Two brothers, one a deaf mute and one a competent one married to two competent sisters, and the deaf mute husband of the competent sister died. What should the competent husband of the other competent husband do? Now, what should the competent husband of the other competent sister do? Nothing, because she's released as his wife's sister. If the competent husband of the competent sister died, what should the deaf mute husband of the other competent sister do? He must discharge his wife with a bill of divorce, and his brother's wife is perpetually forbidden.
Okay, now this is just I want to like dive into this quickly. You understand why this is because you've got a marriage Durabanan on the one side and marriage Dorais on the other side between two brothers and two sisters. Okay.
Right.
If the brother who's in the Doraisa marriage dies, then his wife Doraisa needs a Yibum. And
Right.
furthermore, on the Durabanan level, she's also Achos Zakukaso. The deaf mute's wife is her sister. And now, while on the Daraisa level, he's obligated to her on to do a Yibum or a Chalitza. His wife now who's not married to him Daraisa, becomes Asa to him. Okay, so that's why he has to divorce her. But he's got a problem because he's a cheresh, and a cheresh cannot do a chalitza, right? That we
Right.
we know that from before. And furthermore, because on the Durabanan level, this is his wife's he's married to the sister, so he cannot do yibum either because he's been living with her sister for all this time. So now he has no option. He cannot do chalitza because he's a cheresh, and he cannot do yibum because it's his wife's sister. So now you've got a permanent problem that cannot be resolved except by the death of one of the parties. Okay, so that's the most unfortunate case that we're going to have to deal with among these cases over here, but there are some other equally unpleasant ones. Okay, not
If
quite as bad, but anyway.
if two competent brothers were married to two sisters, one a deaf mute and one competent, and the competent husband of the deaf mute sister died, what should the competent husband of the competent sister do? Nothing, because she is released as his wife's sister. If the competent husband of the competent sister died, what should the competent husband of the deaf mute sister do? He must discharge his wife with a bill of divorce and his brother's wife with kalita. If two brothers, one a deaf mute, and one competent, were married to two sisters, one a deaf mute and one competent, and the deaf mute husband of the deaf mute sister died, what should the competent husband of the competent sister do? Nothing, because she is released as his wife's sister. If the competent husband of the competent sister died, what should the deaf mute husband of the deaf mute sister do? He must discharge his wife with a bill of divorce, and his brother's wife is perpetually forbidden.
Right, so that's the same position as we saw before. Okay,
If two brothers, one a
so
deaf,
now we're on Zion is me. Okay, Shnei Achim. So
oh,
you've got
this is the one that
yeah. So
repeat.
you're right. I think your edition has everything all in one Mishnah, right?
Right, right. This
Okay.
is test of Olive I have here.
Right. So in my edition, so we start with two brothers, one deaf mute and one competent. Okay.
Right,
So
right,
I'm on that case over here. So Shnei Achim, Echad Chesh, Echad Pikach. Okay. You got the two brothers, one of whom is a deaf mute and one is competent. Nisuim, Lishtei Nochrios Pikchos. Okay. So now we are switching all of our cases. Up until now, we've been talking about where their wives are sisters. Now we're talking about where they're strangers. Okay. Um, and they're both competent. So Meis Cheresh Bala Pikachas, if the Cheresh brother dies, who what happens? Okay, Ma Yaseh Pikach Bala Pikachas, no problem. Ocholetz or Miyabem, all that you've got is a standard common or garden case of Yibum, and you can do Yibum of Chalitza. No problems there. Problem comes Meis Pikach Bala Pikachas if the competent brother dies, and all you've got left over is a Cheresh. Right? The Cheresh cannot perform Chalitza. So he has
right.
only one option. Maya se cheresh bala pikachas kones. He has no choice. All he can do is he can marry her because a cheresh can perform yibum. He cannot perform chalitza, but he can perform yibum, and that yibum that the cheresh performs is binding to araisa,
And he could never divorce her.
and therefore he can never divorce her because the cheresh cannot perform a divorce. Right. So he's stuck with her for life. So basically, she has a choice. She has the choice here and say, look, if you want, I suppose both of them have the choice. Say, look, you're taking a chance. If you want to get married, you get married, but then you have no way out. And if you don't want to get married, then you'll just both be. Then she'll be prohibited forever for anyone to anyone else. Okay. Shnei achim pikchim. All right, now the two brothers are competent. Nisim l'shtei nochios. And they are married to two unrelated women. Achas pikachas achas chereshes. One is competent and one is a deaf mute. Meis pikach bala chereshes. What if the man who's married to the chereshes dies? Ma yaseh pikach bala pikachas. Easy kones v'imratz. Okay. What is the sorry? This is the pikach bala pikachas. We're left with a widow who is a chereshes. Now the chereshes also cannot perform chalitza, but she can perform yibum. So what this in this case, the only way out is again through Yibum, Kones. The Imratza lohotzi otzi, and if he doesn't want to stay married to her, then he can divorce her because a woman can be divorced against her will, as we've learned before. She doesn't. So now that helps in her case because she doesn't need to if they want to terminate the marriage, then he can do it on unilaterally. Meis pikach bala pikachas. What happens if the husband of the competent woman dies? Maya se pikach bala pikachas. Easy. Ocholetz umyabem. That's a common or garden standard yibum situation. Okay, and last case in the parak. Shnei achim echad cheresh ve'echad pikach. So you got the two brothers again. One is a deaf mute, one is competent. Nisuim nishtei nochios, who again are married to two strangers, one of whom is a chereshes and one of whom is pikachas. Well, this case honestly is no different from the previous cases. You're just sort of superimposing them on each other, but we're not going to see any chidushim in this Mishnah. Okay, Meis cheresh bal chereshes. If the cheresh brother who is the husband of the chereshes dies. Well, he's got two choices. He got a choice. He can kones. He must do yibum with her. He can divorce her optionally. What happens if the competent man dies and he leaves over pikachas woman? Again, he also has only one choice, which is to marry her. Kones and since he's a cheresh, he cannot divorce her. Okay.
Okay. We are going to
Yud base, yeah.
base. If she performed chalitza with a sandal and it was not his, or with a wooden sandal with a left shoe placed on his right foot, her chalitza is valid. If she performed chalitza with a sandal which was too large for him, but in which he could still walk, or with a sandal that was too small for him, but which covered most of his foot, the chalitza is valid. If she performed chalitza at night, her chalitza is valid, but Rebbe Eliezer invalidates it. On the left foot, her chalitza is not valid, but Rebbe Eliezer invalidates it. If she removed the shoe and spat, but did not recite her chalitza, is nevertheless valid. If she recited and spat but did not remove the shoe, her chalitza is not valid. If she removed the shoe and recited but did not spit, Rebbe Eliezer says her chalitza is not valid, but Rebbe Kiva says her chalitza is valid. Said Rebbe Eliezer, so should be done. Whatever is in action is indispensable. Rebbe Kiva replied, is that a proof? So should be done to the man. Whatever is in action involving the man is indispensable. A chalitza was performed on a deaf mute, or if a woman who was a deaf mute performed chalitza, or if a widow performed chalitza on a minor, a chalitza is not valid. If a minor girl performed chalitza, she must perform chalitza when she reaches adulthood, and if she did not perform chalitza against her first chalitza is not valid.
Okay.
I'm always amazed by this promise that the women have no choice. They have to do yibum. If they have to do yibum, they have to do yibum. Whether they want to or not, they don't.
Well, they can refuse.
They can refuse yibum, but that causes other problems, though.
Yes, that's right.
Right. So
yeah.
Okay. Okay. We have Gimel. We may eat dry food with covenanted hands, but the food are truma, but not if they are kodesh. If the onin and the one who needs to bring an atonement often requires immersion for eating kodesh, but not for eating truma. The stringency of truma is as follows: in Judea, the Amaretz are relieved concerning the tahara of wine and oil throughout the year, and during the wine pressing of all pressing seasons, the Amaretz are relieved even concerning truma. If the wine pressing and olive pressing seasons have passed, and they then brought him a barrel of wine of truma, he should not accept it from them, but he may set it aside for the next wine pressing season. However, if he told him, within it I have separated a fourth of a log as kodesh, he's believed. Concerning jugs of wine or jugs of oil that are still mingled, they believe about them during the wine pressing and the olive pressing season, and even for 70 days prior to the wine pressing season. From Moti'in inward, they are believed concerning earthenware vessels. From Moti'in outward, they are not believed. How so? If the porter selling the pots came inward of Moti'im regarding the very pot of the very pots and the very purchases, he is believed. But if he left, he is not believed. Okay.
Okay, that's it.
We're gonna
We're going to
finish
finish
this.
it tomorrow, correct? We'll finish. It's exactly three Mishnahs to the end, and then on Tuesday we start at the beginning of Yevamos again.
Okay. Yoma. Yoma, we have Dalit.
Yeah.
Every day he would scoop up the coal with a silver shovel and empty it into one of gold. But today he would scoop with a gold shovel and he would bring in the coals. Every day he would scoop with a fourth cob shovel and empty the contents into one of three cobs. But today he would scoop with one of three cobs and he would bring in coals. He also says every day he would scoop with a one shovel and empty it into a three cob shovel. But today he would scoop with a three cob shovel and in it he would bring in the coals. Every day it was heavy, but today it was light. Every day its handle was short, but today it was long. Every day its gold was yellow, but today it was red. These are the words of Rabbi Menachem. Every day he offered a half mana incense in the morning and a half mana in the afternoon, but today he added his two handfuls. Every day it was fine, but today it was the finest of the fine. Every day the Kohanim go up to the top of the altar and set along the east side of the ramp and go down along the west. But today the Kohen Gadol goes up in the middle and descends in the middle. Rabbi Yehuda says the Kohen Gadol always ascends and descends in the middle. Every day the Kohen Gadol would wash his hands and feet from the laver, but today the golden pitcher. Rabbi Yehuda says the Kohen Gadol would always wash his hands and feet from the golden pitcher. Okay.
One more.
Every day there were four pliers, but today there were five. These are the words of Meir. Rabbi Yossi says every day there were three, but today there were four. Rabbi Yehuda says every day there were two, but today three.
Okay.
Okay.
Shemus.
Okay. We have Aleph, Hey. Wait, am I missing something? One may not separate Truma from Leket, Shecha, Peh, or Hefka, or from Maisa Rishon from which Truma has been separated, or from Maisa Sheni, or holy things which have been redeemed, or from the libel, or from the libel for the exempt, for the exempt for the libel, and from the detached for attached, and for the attached or attached, and from the new from the old, and from the old for the new, or from produce of Eretz Yisrael, from produce grown abroad, or from produce from abroad, and produce from Eretz Yisrael. If we did separate Truma, it's not Truma. Five may not separate Truma, but if they did separate, the Truma is Truma. But he who is mute or drunk or naked or blind or Baal Kari may not separate Truma, but if they separated Truma, their Truma is Truma. One may not separate Truma by measure, by weight, or by number, but he may separate from what has been measured, weighed, or counted. One may not separate Truma in a measuring basket or hamper, but he may separate in them half or a third of the volume. And one may not separate Truma in a shah, half full, for half of it is a measure.
Okay.
Okay.
Or halos.
Okay. Aleph Dalet.
Yeah.
People and utensils both become tummy from a corpse. People have a stringency that utensils do not have, and utensils have a stringency that people do not have. When a utensil touches a corpse, three utensils will become tummy in turn after the first utensil touches a corpse, whereas when a person becomes tummy by touching a corpse, only two will become tummy. People will have a stringency that utensils do not have. When a person is in the middle, there can be four persons and utensils that become tummy in succession, but when there is no person in the middle, there can be only three stages of contact. People, clothing, and both become tummy from a zav. People have a stringency that clothing does not have, and clothing has a stringency that people do not have. A person who touches a zav renders clothing tummy, whereas clothing that touches a zav does not remember the other clothing tummy. Clothing is a stringency that people do not have. Clothing that carries a zav renders a person tummy, whereas a person who carries a zav does not render another person tummy. A person who does not convey corpse tumor until their soul departs, even if he is fatally wounded or even if he is moribund, similarly, he still binds his dead brother's wife for yibum, releases her from yibum, entitles his wife to eat truma, and disqualifies her from eating truma. Similarly, domesticated wild animals do not convey truma until they have died. If their heads were severed, they are tummy, and if they are still moving convulsively, the movements are like the severed tail of a lizard that is moving convulsively. Hmm. Anything else? Aleph Hey. Why do we mention the opinions of an individual among the majority, since in any case the halakha does not accord with him, but rather with the opinion of the majority? So what if a court will form the opinion of an individual and rely upon him? Then a subsequent court will not be able to nullify the verdict of the fellow court unless it is greater than the first court in wisdom and in number. If the latter was greater than the former in wisdom and not in number, or in number but in wisdom, it is not able to nullify the decision of the former court unless the latter is greater in number and wisdom. Rabbi Yehuda says, if so, why do we mention the opinions of an individual among the majority for nothing? If so that if a person will say, I have received as a tradition and will be able to answer him, and it is in accordance with the words of so and so that you have heard. Beis Shammai says, a quarter kav of bones transmits tumor from the bones, whether from two or three. But Beis Hillel says a quarter kav of bones transmits tumor only when they come from the bones of a single corpse, for a majority of the structure, or from a numerical majority. Shammai says even from one bone.
Okay. Is that all? Okay.
Right, that's it. That's it.
That's
Okay,
it. Yeah.
great,
All right.
great.
Have a
All right.
wonderful week.
Have a great rest of the week. Have a great day.